Welcome to another episode of Intellectual Dummies. This will be the first episode of a multi-part series, and we are just going to get into the nuances of the Bible. We've been listening to the Bible for our book club. I bought the Kingstone Bible, so if you like to read comic books, this is what I've been doing as well, watching a bunch of YouTube videos.
I will say, I do dig the fact that this has more of a book look to it.
Yeah.
Because it is a comic book, and I was expecting like the flimsy comic book feel to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is pretty nice that it's a hardcover book.
It's a much easier and entertaining read because, I mean, let's get real. Reading the actual context of a Bible without pictures or anything,
yeah,
it's a tough read unless you're really into it. You know,
well, that's what I like so much about the audiobook that we're listening to. It's the audio Bible come to life, so it's like you're listening to a movie. And for me, that's way easier than hearing somebody just read the words.
Yeah, because it's like a play. It's an audio play.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend that on Audible. That's a good listen. And we've just been studying, and we're just gonna get into the nuances of this. But before we get into the nuances of this, I just kind of
sorry.
I just want to kind of go over. We'll put in a nutshell kind of what we each believe, because I wouldn't put either of us under the context, or under the label, I should say, of being like a Christian. Although I do believe in I think the Bible is the truth. Like, once you take away all the kind of theology and magic and stuff like that away from the Bible, I think as far as the values go, I think the values you're just left with the truth. You know, I'll say that to start. What about you? What do you believe?
Well, this will be the third time I'm doing this audio Bible completely through.
Wow. It's like 90 hours, man.
Well, I listened to it twice.
Yeah.
I've had it since 2019.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was actually like one of the first things I got on Audible was that Bible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That and a conspiracy book.
Okay.
But, and also the lectures we're listening to on mythology, I'm more of a believer that it is all true. It is all connected. For whatever reason, stories got broken up, maybe to purposely confuse us. I don't know. But I 100% believe the words for what they are. I don't believe they must have meant this, or maybe this symbolized that. I think when they said A, B, C, maybe it could have been a little over-exaggerated because they didn't know what they were seeing. But I do believe everything to be true. I'm not on the interpretation side of it.
I see. Yeah, that's kind of like where I am.
Yes.
Is where...
And that's why I think this is going to be good, because I'm not on that at all.
Yeah, because I think that some of the stuff probably did happen. I mean, there's historical events in the Bible that we know objectively did happen. There's no really the story of the flood. Things like that. I mean, there's mythologies all over the world that have stories of the flood. That can't be a coincidence.
I believe everything to be true. Mahabharata, the King James Bible, or the Hebrew Bible, whichever one you want to call it. And I believe it in a little bit of an ancient astronaut theory way. I think the stuff that we interpreted as magic just wasn't magic. It was technology that we didn't understand.
I see, yeah.
Did Jesus walk on water? Probably not. But did he have something where they were like, oh, he's walking on water?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
So I'm still on the fence on what I still can't plant my foot on what I believe the most, but I do believe in a mix of all that.
Yeah.
Whether these things were interdimensional or from another friggin' galaxy, I don't know. But I do believe more ancient astronautish and everything, mythology, religion is all connected.
Yeah.
Like when they say that God was in ancient Sumeria, Yahweh was a war god, I do believe that war god, for whatever reason, came to Earth and started this life for something. I do believe in way more than that.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page as far as like what they're probably describing things that they saw, but it was probably different. Like when Ezekiel saw the wheel up in the sky or something.
I think you probably saw a UFO.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like they just called it a wheel because that's what it looked like. They didn't know. They're like, oh, it's some type of anti-gravity interdimensional. Like they didn't have the vocab for stuff like that.
Yeah, well, like the time you can edit this out. That time we were in Wampatuck tripping off acid. And that low plane flew by, and I was like, if this was ancient Egypt, we'd be like, yo, look at the size of that bird.
Yeah.
That's what we would have thought.
No, that's true. That's true. And even like, there's a podcast for Joe Rogan with that Air Force guy. His last name was Fravor. I don't know whether they're calling him General Fravor or whatever, but that's a good episode. Check that out. But he was saying how like he would see when he would fly over, he'd see people like camping in the woods. And he would do this thing where he would take his jet and he could maneuver it in a way where he'd come down and his jet would be pointing straight up over the people. And then he'd blast his jets up. So they just saw fireballs in the sky. And they're like, what the hell? That's awful. And those people are probably going to be like, that was a UFO.
That was a UFO, yeah. Well, even like, for example, I saw in an episode of Ancient Aliens, there's some like tribe that's cut off from civilization that... a plane flew by and dropped supplies in the water for them, and now they like worship the straw plane.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the same thing. Like they think that thing's a god.
Yeah, they were building planes. Yeah,
supplies,
that was in World War II,
something like
that, or something like that. Yeah, and they worshipped airplanes. They were building models of airplanes on their island ever since then,
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, so, stuff like that we know does happen. I guess my personal belief on the Bible, I do believe in God, right? I think that all these different religions are different ways to get to the same thing. Like, I think Genghis Khan pretty much said, in a nutshell, I'm paraphrasing, that, like, all these different religions are all different fingers on the same hand. And that's kind of what I believe. Are some better than others? Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into that. But I look at the Bible as kind of like Herodotus' histories. Herodotus was the first person to start writing down historical events and actually making history like a genre. And him just kind of going off of spoken word and whatever documents were available at the time. We're talking about, this was like 500 BC. So there's a lot of like hyperbole and anthropomorphizing and a lot of exaggeration. You'd be like, and there was 1,000,000 guys versus 1,000,000 guys. It's like, okay, that probably didn't happen, but it was probably a shitload of guys.
It probably looked like 1,000,000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they had this big, blood on the ground deeper than your knee, like stuff like that. It was just a lot of like kind of it's storytelling, but it happened, and that's what I think about a lot of this stuff too. But I think the Bible is more. People are just trying to take all what they think are good values and throwing it into some type of chronological good story that people can read and follow. That's what I think it was meant for. I think it does a great job. I think Christianity is probably the best religion to follow. Most people in the world are Christians. But that's just
Are most people in the world Christians?
Yeah, it's the biggest religion. Well, it's the biggest religion. I don't think that most people in the world are Christians, but Christianity is the biggest religion.
Okay.
So that's a better way to describe it. But yeah, other than that, we've both been studying the Bible I've been going to Bible study. You've read it, you've listened to it twice through, watching a bunch of YouTube videos on how to break this down. So the point of this series is we're going to start with the Bible, and we're going to move through it, and me and Paul are just going to hit every religion that we can. I really want to get to the bottom of everything.
Every biblical text, because I mean, even re-listening to the audio Bible, how it just fast-forwarded the genealogy of Adam, fast-forwarded 7,000 years. And I remember when I first heard it, that's what made me want to listen to the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
Because that fills that 7,000 year, gap.
Yeah.
So but that's not considered a Bible. It's considered religious text, I believe.
Interesting.
Or biblical canon.
What you said after Adam and Eve?
No, they do. I mean, you'll get to it, but they do when they do like the genealogy of Adam. They fast forward like 7,000
they
years.
just go through like I counted it was like 10 generations.
And then they pick up on the last guy. That's a fast forward 7,000. I one time like on my calculator added it was like a little over 7,000 years.
Yeah.
That they fast forwarded.
Yeah.
So what happened during that time?
Yeah, I mean, here, let's look at it right now real fast because that's actually pretty easy to find. Because I remember reading that and being like, okay, well that's counting up the generations real quick. Cain and Abel, right here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're looking at least 9 if I just read that right. Yeah, so about 9 generations. So call it 100 years. I mean, you gotta think that these people, according to the Bible, were living well over 100 years.
Yes, before the flood.
Yeah, before the flood. Hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, at 9, give them all a couple hundred, they all live to be a couple hundred years old.
Because even Noah was 600 when he started the ark.
Yeah, okay, so that's even longer. So the estimate of 7,000 years is probably about accurate, according to the Bible, you know. Which is crazy because I feel like there's a big chunk there that we need to know about. So we'll be
that's a lot of time to be fast forwarding.
That is a lot of time.
But that is where you get the Book of Enoch.
Yeah,
that is where you get the Book of Adam and Eve, a little more detailed story about them getting kicked out of paradise. That's where you hear more about the cherub or the cherubim, whatever they're called. But they're a type of angel. Like you ever see the paintings where it's the little babies with wings?
Yeah.
Those are the cherub, and they have flaming swords.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I never knew that. I never knew that that's what they were, but I know the paintings of the babies that are in the clouds with wings too. And it's like, what the hell are those? Mm-hmm. But they're an actual form of angel.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll have to get into the Apocrypha.
Well, yeah, we definitely will.
Well, I mean, we're hitting everything. Like I said, this is going to be an ongoing series.
Because this is something that I have been doing on my own since 2019. So I'm totally down with just going through you, going with you the things that I fucking have connected. The dots that I connected, you know? Yeah,
we're going to be doing mythologies and stuff too. I mean, there's a lot of overlapping mythologies.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think I'm on board with you when you say these stories are all true, or maybe they're trying to convey the same point in different ways. But let's get into it. So we're gonna go through right now for today. Genesis chapter 1 all the way through the ending of the story of Job. So that's what we're gonna try and tackle today. So I mean, in the beginning, God created man, right? You know, the light was good, the dark was bad. You know, so that's God telling us that there's good and evil forces in the universe. There's no getting around it. You know, it's not a literal interpretation, but.
See, now I like this because right off the bat, I look at this because it's when he showed up, there was the ocean and darkness covered face of the deep, and he said, "Let there be light." So in my interpretation of that, and what and some other audiobooks I've listened to, that makes me believe that he created the sun and the moon.
Yeah. No, I believe that. I mean, if we're going from the framework of the Bible, God created the universe. Even like from my own secular point of view, non-religious, I still do believe in a God that created everything. Something created everything. I don't know if we're even capable of fathoming what that could be. I think religious texts, whether it be the Bible or other things, are the best way to get there. But I do think that God had to have created everything. In fact, that was the epiphany that I came across when I first started believing in God. When I got out of atheism and got into it, I was honestly just really stoned one day, and I was like, wait a minute, why am I here? You know, I actually said this point on a previous episode with Ed Dan, our episode on religion. Check that out. I've been going to Bible study with that guy. The guy's wicked smart. Check out that episode.
He's wicked smart, dude.
Yeah. But I was like, why am I here right now? The fact that I'm even here and I exist and all of this stuff is possible just tells me that there's a God. The fact that we're even here. There's life. There's perception. We have brains to critically think.
You don't at all believe on the science side of just like
I do. I think there's room for both. Like I still believe in evolution and stuff like that. I think there's room for both.
Yeah, well, there is that room for both. I don't know if you listened to that Tucker Carlson debate with that other guy.
I did, actually, yeah.
And I mean, I agree with Tucker in a lot of Christians' perspective on evolution, which is evolution due to habitat.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to evolve to adapt in whatever habitat you're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I do believe that.
Yeah. I mean, even with just to rewind to our episode on the brain, I'm not sure if we touched upon this, but like, when it comes to epigenetics, your genes are going to be triggered depending on your environment, right? So like me or you, if we were born 3,000 years ago, we're not going to be the same person. There's going to be different genes that are activated. We're going to have to be more inclined to be aggressive and murder and stuff like that because...
Or just walk around with bare feet all the time.
Exactly.
All the time, over rocks, over everything.
Yeah, I mean...
Slippery rocks in the snow, like, you know, like...
Yeah, think about it. No antibiotics to fight things. You know, you have to change your behavior because right now there's no incentive for either of us to be as aggressive as we would be if we were born 3,000 years ago.
See, and that's what makes me kind of believe the ancient astronaut theory about we were already kind of here as, you know, these primitive cavemen. And maybe that's why, you know, we were able to eat raw meat and things like that.
Yeah.
Because we were more like the animals, but then they just tweaked us a little bit. And then, you know, and then that's what changed us. Because at one point, before fire, we had to eat everything cold and raw or like hot from the body temperature, but we had to eat everything raw, did we not?
Yeah, for the most part. And I think that's in the Bible where it comes when they talk about unclean meats, you know, because you can't eat those meats raw.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we can't, these are unclean meats, let's throw this in here because this is something people need to know is we can't eat birds, stuff like that because people were probably just eating birds and pork and dying.
I think that's another reason why circumcision was so important back then too.
Yeah.
Because dudes were probably getting infected dick fucking skin. I don't mean to fucking, you know, but they were probably like getting infected, you know, foreskin or whatever.
Well, yeah.
They were like, we gotta figure something out.
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely. But like to the evolution and stuff like that, right? I mean, like I said, I think there's room for both, right? So when we get into our creation story, God's creating all the plants and animals and stuff, and then after each thing he says, and he saw that it was good, you know, and he creates all these animals, he saw that they were good, because life is coexisting, right? But the difference is when he creates man, right? How does he create man? We have a very specific story about how he creates man. And Adam in Hebrew means of the earth, right? And in the story, he creates Adam from the earth and makes him in his own likeness. That means humans, this is how I interpret it, that means humans are different. We are different. There's something that's outside of the traditional, as we see it, evolution about humans than every other facet of life on Earth. Now you could chalk it up, hey, maybe ancient aliens or something like that, but whatever your interpretation is, I would honestly just call you stupid if you're going to tell me that humans are just regular fucking monkeys and by chance evolved to build cars.
In the Mahabharata or the Gita, whatever you want to call it, Krishna, in this Bible it says we come from dust from the earth, right?
Yeah.
In their Bible it says we come from dust from stars.
Okay.
Maybe that's what makes us so special.
So there's some overlap right there.
Yeah, there's overlap.
I mean, that's...
dust from something.
It's the same concept, because if you think we're all made of stardust, not to quote Neil deGrasse Tyson, because I hate that guy, but we are all stardust, I even think about, like, when I'm growing my herbs and spices for cooking and stuff, like, I'm just planting a seed, and from this seed, there's just more matter that's coming from it. Like, this matter is, like, being created and growing into this plant. Like, what is this? Well, this is just sucking up water and duplicating. Like, it's so weird.
I do it every year when I grow pot.
Yeah.
It's like seeds from the earth. I plant it in the dirt. I don't add any chemicals. I just give it water from fucking the earth and sun from the earth.
Yeah.
And I grow these magnificent plants.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy that you have just, like, this tangible thing comes from this little tiny seed, and you got this big thing that now you're eating from, or if you're Paul, you're smoking from it.
I prefer to smoke it than eat it.
I'm an eater. I like tomatoes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that to me just tells me that humans are different. And even when you get into, like, ancient Greeks and stuff, they had a very loose understanding of evolution. But at the same time, again, we're different. You can't tell me that humans aren't different. Here we are with mics and a computer and cell phones and TVs and stuff like that. No other animal even comes remotely close. Like, maybe a monkey picked up a stick to throw at another monkey during a time of war. That's as close as you're ever going to get.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you make of when God says, I'll create them in our image?
An hour. Yeah, so that's a good point. Because
he uses the word our.
He does.
I think he's either talking to the angels or he's talking to other gods.
Yeah, absolutely could be. So this one says he was made in the image of God, higher than the animals.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah. Here's the thing: is every different Bible is a little bit different.
But even that saying in the image of God, a single God, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But the Bible does say our image.
Well, yeah. So different Bibles are all worded slightly differently, which to me,
that one though, that's a little fucked up.
Yeah, well, even the story of Cain and Abel, I believe, is a little different, but we'll get into that.
Oh, okay. Well, we're not getting to Cain and Abel right now, are we?
I don't know.
Because we're still at creation, right?
Yeah, we're at creation, but we're going to go to the book of Job, so we might be going through it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the apple be next? The garden?
Yeah, so let's get to that, right? So, Eve is created from man, right? What that means is women should be submissive to men. Men are the leaders of the household.
Allegedly.
Men are the leaders. Just in general. I mean, I just think that's a good traditional way of going about things. The typical nuclear family. The father is the head of the household, takes care of everything. The mother takes care of the family and the household and makes sure everything
The
works
saying
good.
"king of the castle" comes from biblical times.
Oh yeah, no, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. And it's funny, so I gotta check my facts on this, but like people always say like, no, it's time for a woman ruler, it's time for a woman president or stuff like that. It's always been men, and men have been doing a terrible job. It's like, actually, men have been doing a great job, because here we are now. And two, we have had queens before. And just look into the history of what was going on in the world during the reign of the queens.
Yeah, a lot of
There's
war.
A lot of war.
A lot of war.
A lot of war going on, you know. But that's not to disparage anything, but I mean...
Yeah, I mean, the president in Italy is doing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, she is doing pretty good. I mean, I'm a big fan. But as far as like the nuclear family goes, this is a good model for it, and I haven't seen a model today or in history where that's worked better, you know. Now, God makes a rule: don't eat from this tree. Don't eat the forbidden fruit, you know, because if you eat the forbidden fruit, it's the tree. You don't want to eat from the tree of knowledge, right? But it's interesting because this is kind of like a metaphor for there are some things that you just don't want to know. And then what happens when Eve bites the apple? Suddenly they notice that they're both sitting there naked and they're ashamed, you know, and they know this now. And so what do? They cover themselves up, they're ashamed, and they hide from God. You know, so I think what that means is not all knowledge is worth knowing. You know, kind of like the ignorance is bliss, but like sometimes there's just some things that you don't want to know or you shouldn't know. You know, and that's probably for the better. We had all this stuff in the world that you could have picked from. But when it's kind of like when your parents tell you no, you're like, well, why? Well, why? The rebellious kid.
Well, they were persuaded by Satan.
They were. Exactly, yeah. So
and now, what do you think as far as... Because Satan was an angel, fallen angel. What do you think as far as Satan appearing as a serpent? What do you think happened there?
I'm not sure. Yeah, so he is portrayed as a snake, or like in this book, it's like a weird dragon thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, snake never.
Oh, in that book, it's a dragon. Because I feel like when they talk about serpents, that they're talking about dragons, because God curses that serpent into what is a snake now.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So I think maybe dragon, not in like what we think of flying around dragon, but maybe there was some type of reptile that was a lot bigger. Dinosaurs, maybe. Who knows? Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
But okay, yeah. So what do you think, what do you think as far as him appearing as the serpent?
I mean, I'm not really sure. I've never really thought about it, if I'm being honest. Like, why
that's why we're here, is to think about it.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe because snakes are kind of the connotation of a snake is kind of an untrustworthy animal. You know, like slippery like a snake. Oh, he's a fucking snake in the grass.
If I may say, I asked this question to a Jehovah's Witness, and this is the exact answer they gave me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'll ask you the same thing I asked him before we walked away. I mean,
where are you going? Get back here.
Well, I mean, why make the effort and say he appeared as a serpent instead of just saying he appeared?
Yeah.
And talk them into doing it.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I know I'm sure we'll get into it more, because there is a lot of, once you get down like conspiracy theory rabbit holes, you have, reptilian gods and stuff that come down and give commands to like elitists. And I mean, I'm sure we'll cover that on an episode in the future.
Well, conspiracy led me to God, for the record.
Yeah.
I say, and I heard somebody else say it, and they were right, what's at the bottom of the rabbit hole waiting for you is God.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I believe it. I mean, I think God's a lot easier to find than what you want. God is a lot easier to find than what people think.
For me, with the conspiracies, it made me realize I maybe understand evil.
Yeah.
And demons.
Yeah.
So because of that, I believe in God.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm totally on board with stuff like that too, but like, so the biting of the apple, that rule, right? Don't eat from this tree, right? It seems like an arbitrary rule that God sets for us, but it's kind of like, I think that the meaning in this is like, it's almost like a listen to your parents type thing, because you just don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just, get back to the knowledge thing. Sometimes you don't understand the reasons why these rules are the way that they are, because you're incapable of comprehending it. Think about why you're explaining to a kid why he can't eat the cookie before dinner. Well, your metabolism will go. He doesn't know anything about that. You just have to trust in your authority figure, whether it be your parents or God. Why does the Bible say this? Well, we don't really know. Well, if we don't know, let's practice it, and and go further down the road. You have all this degeneracy we see today.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But one thing I wanted to say in the beginning that I'll say right now is I've been reading a lot of Will Durant lately, he's a historian, philosopher. He's not a Christian by any means, but I just want to address the people that bash the Bible or bash religion and stuff like that. Now here we have thousands of years of knowledge, philosophy, history, theology, thousands of years, many books, all put together. Billions of people follow the word of this. And we have some people that have the gall to be like, oh, that's bullshit. And it's like, who are you? Who are you to even say that?
Well, if you remember when we had that religious talk on the party line with your one friend, I won't say his name, it rhymes with Nurple.
Yeah, we can say his name.
Well, your friend Purple.
Yeah.
But I sat and debated him for a long time, and to the point where you were like, hey man, are you Christian?
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm not Christian, but I do study this subject, and I can always tell when people have never studied the subject and are just full of shit.
Yeah, I know.
Your friend Purple was full of shit.
Well, it's funny because during that same conversation, I remember trying to make all these secular arguments. Like, oh, well, what if this happened and what if that happened? And then he always had an answer for it. I'm like, okay, so there's always... It seemed like there was always another side to what I was saying, right? As in terms of like morality, that was rooted in subjectiveness, depending on the culture, right? And I'm like, oh, well, okay, so there's really no clear answer to that. Oh, there's really no clear answer to that. Once I realized there was like no clear secular answers to anything that was objective, I'm like, oh, well, the Bible does say, and I remember walking away from that conversation being like, I think I'm more of a believer in this scripture than I was before, thanks to him, you know? So, although Purple is a fucking loser...
Well, and like I said, the more
I'll give him points for that.
The more you study it, the more you'll see when people are full of shit.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, I'll even bring up one of my friends. His name was Keith, and I brought this up on the other episode on religion, which, check it out, he was just throwing like a lot of softball questions that he thought were like, well, how come nobody knows about these guys that wrote the Bible? And I was like, well, that's kind of the point, is that they were nobodies. You know, and it's like, these are all softball questions, and here I am, only going to Bible study every other week, hitting home runs with these softball questions. Yeah. And it's like, dude, you really just don't know.
And you'll notice, too, it's always the same softball questions that they think are going to be freaking bangers.
It is.
Even people don't want to hear the argument, well, how come, like, say, for example, how come bad people are getting away with, what they're doing? It's like, but they're going to be judged.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But that is, if you believe, they will be judged.
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely.
Or, you know, how come we do bad? We have free will. People don't like to hear the fact that we were made to have free will. And God is judging us based on that.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, people don't like to hear that.
Yeah. You know, and we're going to get into free will when we get to the book of Job, because I think that pertains a lot to that.
Poor old Job.
Yeah.
I actually one time...
Guy.
I actually had in high school, a teacher said to me, and I never knew, but they said, you have the patience of Job.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, I had no idea what that meant. I thought they were an idiot.
That's funny. I mean, that's a huge compliment, nevertheless. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know what I was doing at the time, but
yeah. So let's move through. Okay, yeah. So I mean, we do get into the book of Cain and Abel, right? This I'm not really sure. So the story, tell me the story that you remember. Because I remember it having to do with both of them getting wives and one of them being jealous that the other was more attractive.
That's the apocryphal story.
Oh, okay.
What's in the Bible is just all of a sudden Cain becomes jealous. But in the apocryphal story, Satan gets in Cain's ear. Because you got to think about it. When they had to populate the earth, who was having sex with who?
Yeah,
brothers were having sex with sisters.
Yeah.
Cain and Abel, in the apocryphal stories, were both born with twins. Both of them had a sister with them. Cain's, and this is Paul's interpretation of what I heard, Cain's sister was hotter than Abel's sister.
Yeah.
And when they went to marry, opposites, because, they're like, well, at least we'll have them not be in the same womb and be married.
Yeah.
I guess that was the decision making. Satan got in Cain's ear and was like, what the hell? Your sister's hotter. You guys shared a womb. Why do you have to do this? And so he killed Abel so he can have his sister, right?
Yeah.
But they don't talk about that part in the Bible. And that's when Cain and his sister go off and they create, the land of Canaan. And that's when he has his own, his own biblical text too. Now
that's interesting because
even if I may say sorry, but in the book of Enoch, and they talk about in the book of Adam and Eve, when the fallen angels have sex with the women, it's the women from the land of Cain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because so that's the Apocrypha.
Yeah, that's the Apocryphal
story. I wonder why they took that part out.
Dude, man, I'm telling you right now, I don't know why they took out a lot of the things they did. Even the book of Enoch. Like, why take out the story of what caused the flood?
Yeah.
Instead they go, there were giants back then, and God flooded the earth.
Yeah. Like, wait a minute.
Hold on.
I feel like there's some things that need to be explained.
They say the men of renown, right?
Yeah.
Like, anywho, let's move on. Like, we don't got time to talk about that.
Yeah, we cut that part out for length.
Yeah.
But in here it's, so Cain and Abel were both making sacrifices to God. And Abel was, he was bringing God, good quality sacrifices, lamb and stuff like that. And Cain was kind of being like, oh, I guess I'll just give him some extras. Like he wasn't really taking it too seriously. And I think that maybe he kind of got jealous that Abel was more favored in God's eyes, maybe. Mm-hmm. And if we're wrong, tell us in the comments. I mean, like I said, these are two non-Christian guys giving their opinions on what's going on.
I'm a total stoner, and these are my interpretations.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this too: what do you make of? Because this is where the Gnostics. This is where they believe that God was just a God and not the God, right? Mm. What do you make of, like, say, for example, when Adam and Eve ate from the apple and they got ashamed of their nakedness and they knew God was coming, so they hid, and God had to call upon them because he couldn't find them.
Yeah.
Which made him almost like human, like how can you not find them?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Or in this instance with Cain and Abel, why did God have to ask Cain, what did you do to your brother?
Yeah.
Wouldn't he have already known?
Yeah, I wonder if that's God testing them for their truthfulness. Like, listen, dude, I'm God. I know where you're at. I know what you did. This is your chance to own up.
See, for me,
instead they hit.
I think it's more on the ancient astronaut side of we're just going to tell these humans like, oh, I'm all seeing and all knowing, so you better not do anything bad.
Yeah.
But then situations like this, it makes them seem more humanized or more like that they're a being that isn't
I see that. I know what you mean, yeah.
Like he arrived in the garden, he's like, yo, where is everybody? Like, I'm sure before that day, you know, Adam and Eve popped out like two excited dogs to see God.
Yeah.
And then one day they're not around. Like, hey, where are you guys? Like, why did he even ask, where are you?
Yeah.
So, like, to me, that makes it seem more, like I said, ancient astronaut-y.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't all seeing, all knowing.
Yeah, hey, I mean, like I said, this is all really just our interpretation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, this book has been written, rewritten, apocryphas taken out.
That's why I'm asking, like, what you think, because you're on the more of the maybe they meant this, maybe that symbolizes that. Like when he called out, like, where are you guys? Like, what do you think that was?
Like I said, like more of like a listen. This is your chance to own up to your mistakes.
Okay.
This is your chance to redeem yourself. But what happened was they kept.
Well, no, they told the truth. They did say.
Well, eventually they did, right? But they didn't come out at first, right? Didn't it take a couple times?
Yeah, they didn't come out right away. But when they did, and God said, "What did you guys do? Why did you cover yourselves?" That's when Adam said, "She bit from the."
Yeah.
So he did tell. Yeah. So you think it was him testing them to see if they'll tell?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. And it's just funny because, like, I mean, and maybe I'll bring this up a few more times. Does this mean that women always fuck up a good thing?
Here's what I will say, okay?
If
I may say, I sat on this for a very long time. I mean, she was tricked, right?
Yeah.
Satan appeared as a snake, which was probably a different, this was all, that's what you learn in the Apocrypha too, that this happened while Adam was asleep after the rib surgery.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So Adam wasn't there to talk her out of it. She really didn't know. So I try not to blame women for that.
Well, that's very noble of you.
Yeah, I try to be sympathetic in that kind of way. For the longest time, I was like, wow, textbook woman this paradise wasn't enough, huh? You had to bite from the apple. But, I mean, in her defense, Adam wasn't there to tell her not to.
Yeah. Yeah, the man wasn't there to tell her the right thing to do.
To tell her, yeah.
I guess I don't mean it to sound like that, but like I said, I'm the hierarchy of the family. The man is the decision maker. And when Adam's not around, you just fucked up the world, honey.
Well, even in the Apocrypha, the book of Adam and Eve, Satan tricks her a couple more times after that, after they're banished.
Yeah.
He has to do a couple more things that aren't good.
Yeah, I mean, but that's an interesting story. Good story of creation.
Okay, so you do think that, though, God knew that all happened. He just wanted to see if they'd tell him the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I feel like God has to know that stuff is happening. But at the same time, I guess, I don't know, that's kind of where I get confused a little bit. It's like, does God know what's going to happen? And if he does know what's going to happen, why is he asking these questions? And that, like you said, that is kind of him more humanizing things. Like the fact that he even has to destroy shit. Like Sodom and Gomorrah. We'll get there eventually. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, did you know it was going to happen? And these are like important philosophical questions that I'm sure could be answered in a multitude of different ways. And we're only here to speculate, but that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, to him destroying stuff, the book of Noah, Genesis chapter 5. The world just becomes a very violent.
Now, what does this comic book say?
Pretty much, it doesn't stray from the actual story.
Does it mention the giants?
No, it doesn't mention giants.
What fucking propaganda have you purchased, sir? I take back anything I say about this comic book. I put it over in the beginning. It changed. We'll create him in our image, And it's not talking about the giants.
It doesn't, but it does talk about the reason why people lived longer was there was some type of like water dome that blocked out the ultraviolet rays. And as soon as they said that, I just thought of you, and I was like,
flat Earth?
Yeah, with the flat Earth and the firmament and stuff like that. And even like one of our old friends from the book club still kind of thinks to this day that we live in some type like space is just all water. Which, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's where the water for the floods came from. I mean, according to this Bible, I mean, I don't think that there was that much water in the sky, or maybe things were just a lot more fertile and moist back then. There was no deserts.
In the book of Enoch, the words are, God opened a window into heaven and let the water flood in. So, how do you know that just wasn't a square that opened in the sky, a little latch door, to let that water flood in for a little while, and you just shut it and was like, all right,
that's good.
How do you know?
Well, I think that, so the story of Noah, I think, is in them ancient people anthropomorphizing an actual event that happened. Like, we know there was a flood. There's mythologies of the flood all over the world. I mean, this goes all the way back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was before the Bible. I think that was like 3,000 years ago, something like that. I don't know for certain. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's story of the floods all over the world. There's evidence of the flood. If you look at Randall Carlson's work, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's really pioneering this new theory that I think has a lot of evidence to it that somewhere what ended the last ice age abruptly was a meteor hitting the ice caps in North America and flooding the world. And the evidence that he presents. I mean, I'm not a geologist. I'm by no means a figure of authority on this, but from what he says, it makes sense. Why is there no big fauna in North America? Because a lot of the big fauna was wiped out because this is where most of the flooding happened. Why was North American human populations more primitive than the rest of the world? Well, because they got reset the hardest. They had to repopulate the most. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense too. The most advanced civilizations were all on the other side of the Atlantic. Why? Because that didn't get hit as much. Look at all the other continents. They have megafauna, elephants, giraffes, hippos, lions, tigers, hyenas, like all these big giant animals. What do we have over here? Bears.
Grizzlies are big.
Yeah, grizzlies are big.
Moose are big.
What are?
Moose.
Moose, yeah.
What do we have else that's large? I think that fucking might be it.
Well, it's really not that much. Really, maybe a handful of, deer.
Yeah, some like friggin' elk or something can be pretty big.
But that's really it.
Yeah,
that's really it in North America.
That's a good point.
Whereas the rest of the world is filled with giant snakes and fucking crazy stuff, I mean, even South America has a bunch of big megafauna.
I think we got giant snakes here.
Probably down south, maybe.
The Everglades, I think.
The Everglades, those are invasive species, but nevertheless, I mean, I think that's where the story of Noah comes from, and I think that the ark is a symbol of a more advanced. This is where I'm going to get into the kind of ancient, more. I'm not going to say ancient aliens because I don't believe in the alien part of it.
It's ancient astronaut theory.
Call it ancient astronaut, or maybe not even astronaut. Might not even be the right word. But an advanced civilization during the Ice Age was able to retain knowledge, food, and to be self-sustainable during this catastrophe. And that's what I think the Ark was.
I think the Ark, along with the ancient astronaut theory, was a legit probably vessel that, had Noah and his family survived during the flood. But as far as the animals, I think it was all animal DNA that they had in vials in the lab on the vessel.
Yeah.
And then when they found land,
Maybe.
they fucking created all those animals again.
Yeah.
Because that would make more sense to me than all of these animals together shitting and pissing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, dude.
Yeah,
Unless God was like, yo, for this flood, I won't let any animals go to the bathroom and they won't eat each other, I promise.
Yeah.
Then I could get on board. But other than that, I think the ancient astronaut theory of that ship being a vessel, and on that vessel had a lab, and in that lab was all the DNA and vials of all the animals.
Yeah.
That he wanted on the next, post-flood stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, different interpretations of that, but I think that is the general gist of the story. Was the flood was a historical event. It did happen.
Yeah.
The ark was some type of thing that restarted civilization.
Well, that was one of the things that made me connect dots. Was hearing the audio lecture we're listening to now on mythology. When you get to the mythology in Iran, their god says, my god's pissed about these giants and he's flooding the earth.
Yeah.
And they have their own Noah.
Yeah.
They have their own version of Noah. So how do you know there wasn't a bunch of Noahs?
Or a bunch of arks.
Yeah, a bunch of gods, a bunch of Noahs. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you not know that?
And then that makes you think about, like, the legitimacy of Atlantis. I know Atlantis was a fake story, but again, I think
how do you know it was fake?
Because I think it was Pluto created the story, it being fiction. But I think that it was kind of like the Bible. Like, it was them creating a story of an event that really happened. There was an advanced civilization that got wiped out probably by the flood. Maybe there was multiple arcs, multiple arcs for different civilizations all around the world. Some of them made them, some of them doesn't. You look at the ancient mythologies of Egypt and in South America, like, there's a lot of overlap. Like, when you read Graham Hancock's, what's that book called? I don't know, one of Graham Hancock's books is, they said that, God came to them and, like, bequeathed to them knowledge. Mm-hmm. Like, you see the ancient hieroglyphics of gods handing man agricultural tools. To me, that's all kind of symbolic of the ark. Mm-hmm. And in South America, they say God came from across the ocean. What got devastated the most was North and South America. The advanced civilizations were across the ocean, so they came over and were like, all right, we got to help out these people. Because I think the whole world at one point was all interconnected at some point. That's why we have pyramids in South America. We got pyramids over in the Middle East. We have them in Asia. We have them everywhere.
Yeah, the monoliths too.
I think
those all have some type of connection.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Mm-hmm. Why, so I think the world was just as interconnected as it was today at some point. But there was that cataclysm, we call it the flood, that reset everything. And then they, again, read the mythologies on Graham Hancock's book. It's a great book. Maybe we'll hit that too one of these days. But yeah, that's my big takeaway. And I think that, so God destroys the earth. Noah releases all the animals and stuff like that. But by no means is sin cleansed. And this is what kind of, I guess, confused me. Maybe we can talk about
even
this.
There are still giants that survived the flood, too.
There was?
Well, yeah, David and Goliath. Goliath was a giant.
Oh, okay. I mean, I haven't gotten to that part yet.
Well, in the words of the Bible, it talks about when they said there were giants back then and, like, afterwards, too.
Yeah.
They did say that there were giants after the flood, just not as many.
I see. Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to get into stuff like that. I want to learn about these giants. Now, after he released all the animals and stuff and everything was good again, God sent a rainbow to symbolize, like, hey, listen, I'm not going to destroy the world again.
By flood.
By flood. And here the gay people took the rainbow and they're destroying the world. Mm-hmm. I'm just kidding.
And the rainbow bends because of flat Earth.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But I think a symbol of sin, the sin stayed was when Noah gets drunk and passes out naked. That shows that, like, hey, listen, sin is still here. You know, it's we cleanse the world, but the sin is still here.
Well, that's the free will in all of us to make the decision.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. You know, and that's what he decided to do. I mean, Noah decided to get drunk and pass out naked, and his son.
He's probably like, I didn't know that
him.
was going to be so frowned upon.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, we just got out the flood. She's doing laundry. I'm drinking wine just to celebrate that.
Give me a break.
Like, I'm celebrating that we just survived this apocalypse that you put on my people. I pass out in bed, mind you, and I'm naked.
I just watched all my friends die.
Yeah, and because my stupid kid walked in and saw me naked, like, now we all got to pay for that?
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, why don't you settle it down a notch?
Yeah.
You just flooded the place.
Or even like, who was it? It was him, right, that found his father naked.
Yeah.
And then he goes and runs to his brothers.
And says, like, I saw him naked.
Yeah.
Why did he have to go and say anything?
Yeah, stop being a tattletale.
Yeah. It's like, but like, yo, I don't know. Maybe he did it to make fun of him or something. Yeah. Like, he thought it was a joke and it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. But yeah, that's a weird. To me, that's a weird story.
Yeah, that is weird. That is weird.
Now, if in your interpretation, like, what do you think that could possibly mean?
Again, that sin is still on the earth, you know, and you really have to really follow the words of God to be as less sinful as you can. I mean, granted, getting drunk and passing out naked, I can't say I've ever done it before, but again, that's just a symbol to show, like, hey, listen, the imperfection is still here.
I have gotten drunk and gotten home and stripped off my clothes and gone into bed naked. And woke up at like 7 a.m. the next morning to take a leak. Yeah. Maybe I put on a pair of boxers on my way back to the bed, but I might not either. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, getting too drunk is a sin.
Yeah, I can see the frowning upon that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, I'll get on board with that.
Yeah, but you know, and they go into procreate, and you know, we'll learn that things just get wild again on the earth. You know. Now they jump into the story of the Tower of Babel. And they just kind of throw this in here. It's just weird that they just kind of went for it. Now, what's your take on this?
I believe I saw a video on it, and I believe that to be true, which is he built the tower extremely huge, and then he took a bow and arrow, and he shot it in the sky to symbolize that he was defying God and he was the ultimate God. And that's why God was like, oh, really? And he blew down a wind and everybody's fucking language got swizzed. Just to show him a lesson, like, no, I'm God, buddy. Yeah, because, I mean, basically what happened was that God wanted people to spread out and be fruitful and stuff, and they didn't do that. Yeah, I don't think they talk about it in the King James Bible, and I don't know if they showed in this, but he goes to the top of that tower and shoots it out into the sky. Yeah, I don't think they showed that. And that's when God returned with the wind. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, after everybody learned languages, then everyone spread out and created their own things. But maybe that's just maybe that's the Bible's justification for why there's people on the other side of the world that may not have known about this particular religion, you know, because you get the argument that, like, there's people that have been living for thousands of years that have no idea about Christianity. What about them? Yeah. You know, so maybe that's kind of their justification for that. Or just different languages in general. Yeah, different. Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, because you think people in North America didn't know about Christianity until the 1400s, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what to take of that. Besides, see, these are the things where I just say I believe the story. Yeah, you know, and I think it's a lot easier to do that than it is to try to, like, figure out what it could possibly mean. Yeah, you know. Yeah, I think that's just us as humans try to interpret it to like make it fit us in our modern times.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't think it to be true.
Yeah, I really don't know what to take from all that. Besides, I mean, I guess besides what I just said that was them trying to justify different cultures and different languages and things like that. But yeah. Anyways, the Book of Job. We'll finish up with this. What if I just didn't record that whole time? That would have sucked.
Dude, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah, I would have been like, all right, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, I would have fucking out of protest. Like, I'm not doing it. We're not doing it together.
Yeah, we're moving on. We're moving on. We're scrapping the religion thing. But we'll finish up with the Book of Job. This poor guy. This poor man.
Now, let me start by saying, what is your interpretation of God and Satan making this bet?
So, back to the beginning of creation, you saw that the light was good and the dark was bad, right? That's God and Satan. The light was good, the light is God, the dark is Satan. There's good and evil forces in this world, and no matter how good you are as a person, we have free will. This is where I wanted to talk about free will, is that we have free will. And bad things, evil things are going to happen to you no matter what. Because even though you're being the goodest guy ever, the evil forces are going to come and fucking run your grandmother over with a bus or something. You know what I'm saying? Because we all have free will and we're all making choices. Ed Dan described it to me in the best way. It's like we're all trying to be good, but there's people, it's like you're dodging people's bad decisions all the time. And every once in a while you might get caught, and that's why so-and-so gets cancer. Like when atheists say, like, well, why did cancer? Why did God invent cancer? Or why did God make this? It's like, because we all have free will. Crazy stuff is happening all the time. But we have to be faithful that your belief in God knows what's up. God has given you the rules to life, and you just have to follow these rules to life. Now, Job was like the best guy ever. Everyone loved him, feeding all his friends, doing the proper sacrifices, high-fiving his friends, they're all having a good time, and blah, blah, blah. And I guess the metaphor for what I just said was Satan is chilling with God for some reason.
Well, I mean, if I may say, before there was an actual war between Satan and God, they were constantly debating. There are stories of Satan coming to God in a high court setting.
Well, look at this picture.
Oh, is that what you're? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that was just something where Satan was pretty much saying yo, you gave them free will, but if these prophets are only loyal to you because you're giving them these farmlands and this
absolutely,
and that.
Yeah.
And God was like, no, I'll take it all away and fucking But what do you think do you think that was a bet that actually happened between?
No, I think it's a metaphor.
See, I believe that to be actually true.
Yeah, see, I think it's a metaphor for what I just described.
Yeah.
Bad things are just going to happen because it's free
Why
will.
wouldn't they just say that instead of telling us a story about a man named Job that wasn't real?
Because that's what most of this Bible is. It's anthropomorphizing values that you should go by. Because people like a good story. Instead of just being like, hey, just being good's pretty cool, right? It's like that doesn't stick with anybody. I mean, we all know that, but nobody cares. You need religion. Now, this is a good quote from Will Durant, because Will Durant does a whole chapter on religion. I would recommend any one of his books. I've been listening to him a lot. Is religion is necessary to control our animal instincts. That's why these values are wrapped in the supernatural, because we need to be afraid of something that we can't control to suppress our instincts to want to kill and pillage, rape and pillage and stuff like that. So I think that's why that's why we have these stories like this.
Yeah, I definitely take it in the actual words that they had a bet. And God was like, no, watch, I'll take everything away from them. Well, actually, it was God let the devil do what he wanted, right?
Yeah.
And he wouldn't interfere. So he's like, no, you do that and watch. This dude's going to stay loyal to me through and through.
And he did.
And that was something that, yeah, it was another thing that God proved, which made the devil even more pissed.
Yeah, because I mean...
Because this is all stuff that happened like before their war.
Yeah, I mean, Satan destroys his, all his
lands,
sheep, his
everything.
land.
Gives him fucking the boils.
Yeah, well, he eventually kills his family, parts of his family, and then eventually he still stays loyal, and that's when Satan comes back and goes, well, you didn't let me touch him. The rule was I wasn't allowed to touch him. If you let me touch him, then I won't believe, then he won't believe, and that could be a metaphor for like, okay, he kills the family, all that bad stuff is happening around you. Now you're starting to question God. Why does war happen? Why does all this crazy stuff happen in the world? But I still believe in God. Okay, now I get cancer. I get the boils and stuff. Because after the bad stuff starts touching you, you still have to believe in God. And he stayed faithful through the entire thing. And even his friends eventually were like, dude, you had to have done something. You did something. He goes, no, I'm not something. And it's like, not everything that bad that happens to you is something that you necessarily deserve. I mean, it's like, again, I'll go back to the free will. Is bad stuff just happens because we're all navigating this world together. Some people believe and some people don't believe, but I think the more people that do believe, the better the world will be. I always say to myself, like, if everybody in the world acted like you, would the world be a better place? And that's kind of like one of the values that I go by. Right, though?
Is it?
What?
Okay.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, sure, man.
Yeah, that's one of my commandments.
If everyone was like you.
Yeah, would the world be a better place? Right?
I mean, do I even have to say it?
What? Well, I'm not saying that everything that I do is the best.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But it kind of keeps me on the path of trying to do right. Nobody does. We're all sinners. We all sin.
Oh, dude. Yeah, no, totally.
Nobody. It's impossible to follow every rule that God sets before us, which is why Jesus sacrificed himself for us so that we can sin, because he died for our sins. But as long as you believe in that sacrifice, then you can sin without all this horrible stuff happening to you. Because they say in the book of Job, like, we all deserve this and much worse. They say in a nutshell. This dude goes through the ringer. But after he doesn't curse God's name, God comes down and makes everything all fine and dandy again.
What do you think about the part where God tells Job, well, he's saying to Job, like, is it not I who controls the Leviathan? What do you think about them mentioning the Leviathan in the Bible?
Yeah,
which, by the way, is a mythological creature that lives in the deepest part of our ocean.
Yeah, they, him mentioning that, I'm sure there is, maybe back then, if not maybe to this day, giant animals in the ocean. I'm a firm believer in that. I've even heard from pretty authoritative people who have said, my so-and-so saw a giant squid that was as long as the boat that they were on. And this dude was like a military guy. These boats are huge.
You gotta remember too, giant squids were a myth until 2007.
I know.
When a Japanese oceanographer finally caught one on video.
I know. And who knows what else is down there. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There could be things that are just as big that just crawl along the ocean floor. We don't know. We don't know anything about that. And if they did find something like that, they wouldn't tell us.
Of course not.
They would not tell us. They found a big, giant, sleeping Godzilla-like creature.
Oh yeah.
That they're like, all right, time to take this submarine to the top. You know?
Yeah, no, for sure.
I wouldn't doubt it. I would keep an open mind to that.
Yeah.
But he mentioned that, like, because Job was kind of, being like, why isn't God answering
Well, he was
me?
starting to have his doubts.
Yeah, he's like, why isn't God answering me? He goes, he's answering you, but in different ways. And his buddy here, Elihu, pretty much says, he's not going to talk to you in a way that you want to be talked to. Let me see if I can nutshell it a little better. God isn't denying you anything. If he does not listen, he does not address those who speak in arrogance. So, like, all this bad stuff is happening to you. You're like, God, why? Why me? I'm so awesome, I do everything great. Why me? Why me? And it's like, God's not going to answer that question. You just got to pretty much roll with the punches, because that's what free will is. Bad things are going to happen, So that was pretty much my takeaway from the book of Job.
Yeah, I just believe it all to be true.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm more of like kind of, there is truth in here. There is fact. There is objective events that have happened, but I think it's mixed with a lot of anthropomorphizing and stuff like that. Like I said, a religious version of Herodotus' histories, but like a guide. This is a guide for your morals, and it's thousands of years of knowledge that people should be taking into consideration. Like, if you haven't studied any religion, you need to. It's just important.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just important. Don't be an atheist. Being an atheist is like the most ignorant thing that I can think of. Like, really nothing. Everything that exists is everything that we can only see and touch, and
Now,
hear.
what about the agnostics? Who what are they?
They
just don't
they
know.
Believe in God. They just don't know.
Yeah, they believe that they just don't know.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're not a part of a structured religion like Christianity or whatever, and you believe in God, like, I guess I would kind of be agnostic, because I believe in God, but I'm really not sure what I believe.
But you're looking into it.
But I'm looking into it, yeah. So I'm going to have my own nuanced
what about
story.
the people who say that and just don't look into it and go, I know there's a God.
I mean, that's better than nothing, I guess, But I think that it's absolutely important to look into these religious scriptures, regardless of what it is. I think Christianity is the best. But it's a good way to see where your morals come from. I mean, our civilization was built on Judeo-Christian values. They are the best values right now. So, yeah. Anything in closing?
No, like I said, I just believe that they're all real stories that really happened. I never think of this like, what could this possibly mean?
Well, like the story of Noah, you had your own interpretation of that.
Yeah, but I still believe that happened. I don't think anything like with Job, you think it was just a story telling us about keeping our faith, right?
Yeah.
I think that there was the actual argument, and they made the bet.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what I believe.
Yeah. That's a good interpretation. I'm sure there's a million other interpretations.
Well, but that's what it says in the book.
Yeah.
I'm not interpreting anything.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, I'm not really interpreting anything either.
Well, you are.
There is good and evil.
Yeah, but you are interpreting the story when the story is. I mean, and you even showed the pictures. Like, there is the devil in front of a high court, is he not?
Yeah, there is some type of like
so in that thing there,
the
story is them debating about these prophets wouldn't be as loyal as they are if they didn't have all this the lands and everything, and that's when they made the bet.
Yeah.
So why would they even put this picture if it was just an interpretation of this to symbolize that people are bad and you got to keep the faith?
Yeah, people need a good story.
I disagree.
People need a good story.
I disagree.
People always love a good story.
Well, then why have this picture of him in front of the council and God? Like, why even have the picture?
Because people need a good story. Yeah, people always need a good story to reinforce values, to really put to really put a story to the value, a metaphor for the value, and why it's important to keep your belief and keep your hope.
So like, what's the metaphor and the value on like creation?
On creation, I think that's kind of setting up the story. So what are you talking about? Creation, like the beginning part of it?
Yeah, the beginning part of it.
Well, he talks about how that there's, the light is good and the dark is bad, and that to me is saying there's good forces in the universe and there's bad forces in the universe. He creates all these animals and he says that this is good, everything is good, and stuff like that.
Well, I think what he means by light is good and dark is bad is that, like I said, he created the sun and the moon, and the moon brings light. People think just because it's nighttime that the moon brings dark, but the moon brings light.
Yeah.
And I think what he means is just nothing can live in the darkness.
But things can.
Well, things underwater.
Yeah.
And that's what I think they mean by darkness cover the face of the deep, but no plant can.
Yeah, plants can live in the dark.
What plants live in the darkness?
Yeah, there's plants in like the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, okay. Okay. I guess I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But, I mean, it all is derived at some point from life. From life or light, I guess. But at the same time, there are things that live in just absolute pitch black. They just have adapted to that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that the light and the dark is a metaphor for there's gonna be good and evil forces in this universe, and we have to learn to navigate life with those two things in mind.
Do you think he created the sun and the moon, or was it already
I think God created everything. Yeah,
okay.
Everything. Yeah. Like to me, all our scientific knowledge that we objectively know is true has to fit into this somewhere. Because I'm not going to ignore information. I'm not going to say that the Earth is 5,000 years old. I know I'm not an authoritative source on how old the Earth is, but I will trust the science.
Okay.
In that regard, though. In that regard,
Cool, man.
So yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that. And
right.
On our next episode, we'll be going through the patriarchs.
I mean, where are you in the actual audio book?
I think I'm somewhere where Lot gets rescued.
Okay, so that's
I'm about there. But as far as this, I'm almost done with.
Well, this fast forwards a lot.
It nutshells a lot.
A lot. I mean, we're nowhere near done with Genesis in the audiobook, just for the record.
Yeah, I'm probably about halfway through it or something.
No, you're not.
Sure.
We're nowhere near halfway through Genesis.
Okay.
Genesis ends with friggin' Moses dying and them crossing the sea.
The 12 tribes of Israel?
If that's what it is.
Joseph becomes the ruler.
Because the book after Genesis, whatever that book is next, is the guy who takes over from Moses. I forget his name. Might have been Eli, but I could be very wrong.
Is Moses? Is that Exodus?
Yes.
Moses?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think that's Exodus. That doesn't seem like it's Genesis.
No, but there's 5 books of Genesis.
Oh, okay. So all of Exodus is part of Genesis?
Yes.
Oh, okay. See, I don't even know that
because
much.
That's this Genesis is also called the Book of Moses, and it's also called the Torah.
Okay.
And that's it ends when Moses dies, and then they cross that sea or that river, whatever the fuck it is. Yeah. Well,
in the next episode, we'll start with Abraham and move through to the 12 tribes of Israel.
Cool.
Chapter 49 there. So
we'll
finish up.
We've already got through that. Like we're already there on the audiobook too.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to do a little bit more studying on that. That was a good talk.
Sweet.
Covered some good bases. So, like, comment, subscribe if you've made it this far. Thank you very much, and stay tuned for more.